Hey everybody, Sukh Sidhu here, and today I'm joined by Emma Storey Gordon. Hi Emma.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me and giving me some of your precious time, which I know is very scarce at the minute.
It is, but I enjoy this stuff, so I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about your content output and this stuff to some degree, I'm sure, today. And we're going to cover, I'll go into detail into your various businesses, talk about collaboration, which I think you're great at. But for those of you that don't know, for those of you or for the listeners who don't know anything about you, just want to give a brief overview into who you are and your businesses as they are right now.
Okay, so my name's Emma. I am primarily an online coach. I have an online group coaching business with Chloe Madeley, and that's like I guess the biggest business in terms of the amount of people that we get in the business and the amount of people that we impact and hopefully positively impact and help get results. So that's called the EC method. And then I have a smaller group coaching business which precedes that called Commit to Six. And then I have one-to-one coaching business that has 3 coaches that work for me on there. And I also run EIQ Nutrition with my business partner, Amelia. And I run a mentorship called AF Mentors. And that is what I do.
Lots of things. Just those things. Is that it?
Yeah, just those. Yeah.
Oh, and level up events. I'll put that one in there
Oh,
for
yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit of an add-on to EIQ, really. But
Sure.
yeah, hey, there's another one.
Why not throw live events into the mix, hey?
Why not? I mean, harder than what you expect, shockingly.
Yeah. I do not enjoy hosting them. We promised to do them every quarter at OFB, and it became very difficult. But that's another story. So how did this all start? So how did you kind of enter the fitness industry?
I think all this has been very much organically following what I love doing. So I standard left school and was like, don't really know what I want to do. I kind of like sport. So I went and did sports science. And then it was actually in my last year that really got me interested in it. Like, I think I spent the first 3 years kind of enjoying uni life. And then in the last year, we started learning about exercise and health and the benefits that exercise can have to health. And in particular, I was just blown away by the benefits of even a short amount of exercise on type 2 diabetes and like the reversal of type 2 diabetes. So then I got really interested in that. And that was kind of where I thought I wanted my career to go. And I went and worked in diabetes research and I started a master's in diabetes, which I then later dropped out of. And anyway, I kind of went down that path. But that's what got me really interested in exercise. And then I realized I love working with people on their exercise. And then I became a personal trainer. I mean, I was doing that throughout this, but then I kind of focused fully on that. And I think through doing that, I realized the massive impact you can have online and that it's so much more than the hour in the gym with your trainer. It's actually everything else that you're doing. And if I could work online, I was then not like geographically constrained either, and I could impact more people. So for example, the EC method has about 500 people in intake. We've had over 5,000 people do the course. That means that like there's no way I could have possibly helped that many people working one-to-one in a gym.
Sure.
And in a way that's so different. So instead of looking at primarily the exercise bout that you have with them, you're looking at their behaviors outside of that as well. And that kind of impacts on people and the mindset changes and how they think about dieting. That's really what got me kind of hooked into the online side.
So how long before you went online?
A good couple of years, mainly because online coaching wasn't really a thing. And like I was just I think I had a few online clients while I was at that point I had started a PhD, which I also dropped out of. But I was doing that and then I had some online clients. I was just sending them Word documents with workouts in. So, I was right there at the start when
that's what I was doing.
When we would just send Word documents.
I actually started with PDFs in Dropbox, and then I was like,
oh, nice. I didn't even save as PDF.
Well, I couldn't edit it. So then it was a fresh PDF
Oh.
every time I wanted to send them something. So it didn't really work, but now we've got apps and software. Stridus.com.
Yeah. Oh, heard about that. There's this really good app. What was it called again?
Stridus.com. If anyone wants to check it out.
Oh yeah.
So in person for a few years, and then you kind of discovered the magic of online from a impact perspective, you can reach more people. Then obviously from a personal perspective, I'm sure there was some benefits that you kind of looked at there as well. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that right?
No, yeah, I agree. I actually, and I say this all the time, but I was an okay in-person coach. I'm very good at online coaching. Like, I'm a very good online coach. I wasn't very good in person. And I think it's just like the different ways of coaching. I don't think they're really comparable. Like it's comparing apples to oranges, right? Like you might, if you're an in-person coach, you might be incredible at getting someone to push out that last rep or correcting someone's form that have absolutely no benefit online.
Yeah.
And online, you might be incredible at talking to someone about getting their head around the scale weight, which you probably wouldn't have time to do in a gym setting. Different people, different goals, different jobs, essentially. I think too many people compare the two as if they're like one is better than the other. They're not. They're just different.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was nowhere near as good. So I was good at group stuff in person. Like one-to-one PT, it didn't really fire me up. But then online, yeah, I was just far better at getting people results. So how long or what did online look like before, it became all these other products and businesses? How long were you doing it for? What were the various iterations and things that you tried, and how difficult or easy did you find it?
So, like I said, when I started, it was literally just sending people PDFs or Word documents or something. And then I think like as that side of the industry grew and as I grew as a personal trainer, as I learned a hell of a lot more, like that all started to change. And I think it's a good example of like starting where you are with the knowledge that you have and then getting better as things progress. For me, it really started taking off when I dropped out of my PhD failed for various reasons. And I was like, hey, that's one door shut. I need to make this work now. Because previously, and you've worked with so many coaches, you know what it's like. If someone's got 2 jobs, they're like, hey, I don't take this seriously. It's my side hustle, whatever. And it never grows. Whereas when you're like, oh man, this is it now. Like, I need to make this work. It gives you a bit of a kick up the bum. So I think that was a big turning point for me. And I think, like at the time that was quite painful. But when you look back on things, you often realize that the best things come out of the worst situations. So it might have been like a breakup and then you decide, hey, I'm going to move here, or I'm going to do something completely different, or like what would be deemed a failure. Like I failed to finish a PhD. That's a failure, right? But actually, because that door shut, I was like, right, I need to go to this door and I need to make sure that I open this door and that I really give it my all. And I just think that if at the time, like things had worked out and then I'd been offered like a decent salary of an academic role, like you get tempted by these things. And it's something I think about quite often. I'm like, wow, if I'd been offered a grad scheme after uni and that's the social norm and you're like, oh wow, 30 grand a year. Like when you're a student, you're like, oh my God, like I'm rich. Like this is so much money. I remember getting my first job after uni and I was on 22 grand a year and I was like, God, like what? Like what am I going to do with all this money? Whatever. It's funny looking back, but then I think the point is like when you're offered something that is pretty good in most people's eyes, it's very hard to say no to that. It's actually easier when there's nothing else. when you're like, oh shit, I have nothing else to do. I'm going to make sure this works, compared to like, there's a pretty good offer on the table that you'd have to turn down to back yourself enough that you can do this on your own. And bearing in mind, I had no vision of what I was going to create. I was just like, hey, I kind of like this. I'm going to follow my passion and hope I make enough money. And luckily for me, I don't have like extremely extravagant tastes or live in a very expensive place. But yeah, that's kind of how that worked out.
So when you stopped your PhD, let's call it stopping it.
Yeah.
Where was online business at then in terms of number of clients, for example?
Oh, I think I had like 5. Okay. And I'm pretty sure they were paying me like £80 a month. So I very quickly had to sort my shit out.
And did you?
And actually, to be fair, at that time, I was also working face-to-face. Okay. So I dropped the PhD and I did face-to-face a bit and was working online.
So how long did it take you before you went fully online?
To be honest, I can't remember exactly, mainly because right up until the pandemic, I was still doing like 2 or 3 sessions because I still love face-to-face. And if I could do it now, I probably still would, but there's just not enough hours in the day. And, you know, most gyms, like, you have to pay rent or something. It doesn't really work out. So I could never say that I like fully dropped it until relatively recently. But I was making the vast majority of my income online pretty quickly after that.
Okay. And then what triggered, see, I suppose you've got an option once you get to, okay, one-to-one online coaching is going really well. I've probably taken this as far as it can go, or maybe you thought that, or maybe that wasn't the case. What makes you decide that you're going to start a different product or a different business? Like what came next, and why wasn't it just grow one-to-one online coaching more and more and more, and why was it another thing instead?
Yeah, I think this is, again, like playing to your skill sets a little bit. So, I mean, there's two ways that you can grow your business. You could be like, I want to take on more coaches, and one-to-one's the way that I think I coach best and is the vibe I want. And that's what I want my business to be known for. You're going to get a very bespoke service. It's going to be like almost hand holding, or, you know, like very much one-to-one. Or I think I could help more people if, you know, the Zoom call that I do is watched by 500 people, not one person. And I want to grow my business in a group coaching setting. And part of that is your skill set and what you enjoy, but part of it's like the problem that you solve for people. So the EC method helps women who have been yo-yo dieting for their whole lives. The messages are the same. They don't necessarily need the one-to-one. It's like, we just need to make sure that we're talking about the scale of weight and breaking that down and giving people the right nutrition advice and reassuring them at the right periods of time and dispelling some of the myths that come up. And then, I don't know, something like a really poor relationship with food, maybe someone would need a little bit one-to-one support with that. So it kind of depends on who you're working with and what kind of support they need as well. But the way it went for me was I started working for Grenade Fit, so Jamie Alderton's gym, which was running an online program. And this was amazing for me at the time. Now, I mean, does it matter if I disclose how much I got paid? But basically nothing, like genuinely nothing. So I think it was an 8-week program. I think the coaches got £15 for the 8 weeks, right? So, I mean, for 8 weeks of coaching, £15 is almost nothing. But to me, I was like, wow, someone's giving me 40 clients. When would I ever get this experience? And at the time, like, I was maybe sitting around like 15 to 20 online clients, like just making enough money kind of thing. And I was like, I have no idea what I would do with 40 clients. Like, I'll learn the systems of how you manage those people. And because I have always cared about my reputation, I never want someone to be able to say, I worked with Emma on Grenade Fit or on any platform. She didn't really reply to me, or I didn't get a good coaching service. So I massively over-delivered for the £15 I was getting paid for 8 weeks of coaching, bearing in mind that's £7.50 a month for coaching them. So again, like,
why sorry, why was it 15? Like, it might as well have been 0.
Well, I mean, 15 times 40 is something, I guess.
So was it 15 times per class? 15 times
40 clients.
per class?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then actually I saw it as free advertising as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was like, you know, I've got mates who are paying for Facebook ads, but actually here I'm developing a relationship with someone. I'm learning a lot about coaching. I'm learning a lot about this business structure, and I'm getting a good reputation in the group. And the good part of that was a lot of the other coaches who worked on Grenade Fit, rightly so, kind of resented the £15, or, you know, sometimes I think it was 15, sometimes 20, whatever. And so they didn't put that much effort in, which meant if I just put a little bit more in, I looked like by far the best option there, like the best coach there. So again, that kind of helped me as well. And that actually led to quite a lot of people then staying on with me one-to-one. And it meant I got like a really cool insight into how you can run a group coaching program. There was a ton of stuff that I was like, I would never do this. And there was a ton that I was like, wow, that's how you can program for 40 clients in one weekend, rather than what I would be doing, which is like looking through, you know, it would take me half an hour a client, I would never sleep. So yeah, that was a really cool like learning curve, and it opened my eyes into group coaching, and that when you do group coaching right, it shouldn't be like the lower tier to one-to-one coaching. When you do group coaching right, it's better than one-to-one coaching, because you're not just getting the coaching support from like your coach, but the whole community as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I love that you saw that for what it was, and it's an opportunity, right? Like, me, marketer at heart, like, I just see a funnel. As you may not have thought about it in that way, you thought about it slightly differently, but I'm thinking someone's giving me 40 people, all I need to do is nurture them if I was thinking purely marketing, and it's going to spit out X amount of clients. And you've kind of seen that from a coaching perspective of I can deliver a great service, get people amazing results, and then it's going to grow my one-to-one online coaching business. And I don't think everybody, as you mentioned, not everybody sees it like that. It's resented on not getting paid anything, being taken advantage of or whatever. And maybe it was, but it's still an amazing opportunity. So would you say, obviously we'll talk about collaboration shortly, and you've done a lot of that. Was that a positive experience overall, or would you say it was a collaboration that didn't really work out?
Oh, it's so positive. Like, and I really get on with Jamie, and I've got all the time in the world for him. We don't have the same coaching ethos, but it doesn't matter. Like, I learned a ton from him, and we had a discussion at the end, and it ended really well. And he was like, look, you clearly are good enough and want to do your own thing. This isn't going to work if you've got, because at some point it becomes a bit of a clash, right? I think I'd just launched Commit to Six, and he was like, this is too close to Grenade Fit. It's not going to work. Actually, at the time it was Train with Joe, but anyway, doesn't really matter the program. And I was like, yeah, it is time that I went and did this on my own. So I'm hugely grateful for like the experiences I had there. And I think, I would hope that so is he, and we kind of learned a lot from each other. And yeah, I think it was a really good learning curve. And I think you're right, like, especially earlier in your career, you need to think more about like the opportunity that you're getting from something rather than the direct paycheck from it, and having a bit of perspective and clarity of, if at the moment you have no clients, or I didn't have none, but like you don't have very many clients, and someone is offering you to work with 40 people, take it. I don't really care what you're getting paid. Like, take that opportunity. It's way better than wasting your time on ad spend or trying to just show up on social media and talk to no one for ages and ages. Like, you're literally directly in front of people.
Yeah, I agree. While we're on collaborations, we'll continue talking about them. So collaborations, partnerships, I think have seemed to have been a large feature of your career. Like, why is that?
Some of it, honestly, by chance. Some of it because genuinely, I think if you collaborate with the right person, 1 + 1 = 3. Like, and it has to be the right person, because that can flip the other way. And it can be that there's this just diffusion of responsibility or resentment of each other, as in, I'm not going to push this because I only get half the profit for it. And if I can get someone in my program, then I'll get the full profit for it. That's when it doesn't work. But if you're both all in and you complement each other's skill sets, it's better than working on your own. And then the other thing, and I don't know what you think about this, but when my businesses that I'm collaborating on like win or do really well, it feels amazing. Like, after Level Up, I was like, this is amazing. I'm in love with Amelia. I'm in love with the businesses we built. I'm in love with this community. I would never have that on my own. Like, it's not the same feeling. It's like if you win with someone else, cheesy, but it's like winning twice. When you win on your own, it's like you're sitting in your room being like, oh, there's that strike mark I wanted to hit. Like, great. And you text your mate and they're like, cool. Like, there's nothing, it's not the same.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Why don't you think we see more of it? So just to give you a bit of context on this. So I've collaborated, partnered plenty over the past 15 years in various businesses, and more recently getting into the world of software and speaking to investors and people like that in like Silicon Valley and San Francisco. A lot of the investors won't touch you if you don't have a co-founder or have a partner, if there isn't a team of founders, because it's so hard. It's so hard to grow a business on your own. And we're obviously not talking about billion-dollar unicorns or software companies. It is a solo service-based business, or does start like that for most people. But still, running a business is really hard. And if some of the smartest people in the world won't even touch you from an investment perspective, if you don't have a co-founder, why don't we see more of it in the fitness industry?
So I think I got really lucky, because genuinely, and it didn't start like this, because I think there's always that advice of like, don't work with your best friends. And I actually think that's true if you were best friends before you started, because your relationship has started as friends. And then when you move into a business relationship, that can get quite messy. Chloe and Amelia are 2 of my best friends, like 2 of the most important people in my life. But we didn't really start as friends, like associates, if anything. And then we built a friendship because of partly the byproduct of how much time we spend together. And I think that works much better. To your point about like why we don't see it more, I do think there are distinct pros and cons to this. So I see some people maybe on AFM who are like, oh, I might do this with this person. And I'm quite like, what do they offer you? As in, what are you both bringing to this business? Because if you're essentially very similar coaches, you're just diluting your profit as opposed to building something that's bigger. Like, unless you have distinct skill sets, unless you bring out the best in each other, then actually I think sometimes the reason that people want to collaborate is because they lack the confidence to put themselves out there on their own. And I think that's the wrong reason to be doing it. If there's a reason that you both work together and 1 + 1 = 3 for you guys, 100% a collaboration is amazing. And like you say, because coaching is a solo thing, sometimes it like if you've got slightly different coaching styles, for example, Amelia and I couldn't coach together. We can run EIQ together, but there's no way that we could coach together. We'd fall out all the time because we just have slightly different opinions on things. And that would just never work. And now on the outside, to anyone who is kind of just like observing the fitness industry or us, you'd be like, oh yeah, they must coach pretty similar. No, fundamental differences there, which is fine. And there's certainly people that are way more suited to Amelia, certainly people that are way more suited to me, but we couldn't work together on that. So it's kind of figuring out that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Like, why don't you think we see it much?
I think there's probably not a culture of working together within the industry. It's very kind of we spoke about this before we went live. Like, there's a scarcity mentality rather than, you know, let's all build a bigger pie. It's often, shit, that person's taking some of my pie. I want this piece of the pie, and there's only a limited amount of it. So I think a lot of it is around scarcity, people seeing others as competition, which is insane because there's so many people out there who need help. I think that's a big part of it. And it's just not been done enough for other people to follow along. Obviously, I gave the example of software where it's just incredibly common. So there are forums on the internet of people just looking for co-founders before they get started in software. Obviously, that just doesn't exist in fitness. If people are like, hey, I want to start an online coaching company, anybody want a partner? That just isn't a thing. But I think a lot of people more people would benefit from it than are currently benefiting from it, even if it's not like from a legal entity perspective. So if you take Dan and Mike from Biceps and Banter, for example, for all intents and purposes, they just create content together. It's just the public-facing brand that is the business that they have together, but individually they work with their own clients, right? Like in the background, they have kind of separate businesses. There's a few things that overlap. And I think there are probably people who could benefit from having almost like an accountability partner, someone who pushes the other person to make sure they show up, work together in content. So there's a reason to have to show up and work with the other person, complementary traits. There's just an issue of how do you find the right person when...
Yeah, and I guess that's a good example of like, it's harder, even things like having banter together, or if you want to do a podcast together, like actually having two people that you can kind of jump off each other a little bit, that's quite useful. And then I think like genuinely one of the best things for me is, like I said, winning twice, but also like 95% of my job is just having fun with two of my best mates. Like, how cool is that? And I think that when you remind yourself of that, even when stuff doesn't go exactly as you wanted, or it feels like a lot of hard work, like that's where the longevity is. You're like, hey, I just enjoy this anyway. And look, I'm getting paid to do it, and I get to help a load of people while I do it. Like,
how have you started the relationships with people? Because obviously you have a relationship with Chloe, with Amelia, who you now have businesses with, but also obviously you have the podcast. And I'm assuming the relationships with all these people who you kind of work together with, like the relationships were non-existent prior to the fitness industry, right? So I suppose that's what people are lacking. Like, how do I even start building these relationships? How do I even find and connect with the people who I could work with? And obviously you've done that very well, whether it's organically or proactively. Like, what advice would you give to people?
So if I think about where I met, say, Mike and Dan from the podcast, or Amelia, like that was both body power. So events, go and speak at what you maybe don't have to speak, but like go to events, find like-minded people that are doing similar things that you admire. Like I admired Amelia for years before we ever worked together. And then I think with Chloe, she invited me on her podcast. And again, I approached both of them. Well, actually, that's not true. I tried to push both of them to do it themselves. And both of them were like, I want to do it with you. So with the EC method, after that podcast, I got so many clients. Like, so many people messaged me. And I was like, Chloe, just as a friend, I was like, are you doing online coaching? And like, do you know how to set this stuff up? I'm more than happy to show you, because I've got genuinely, like, I don't know, 50 clients off the back of that one podcast. And she was like, oh no, I'm not really interested in that at the moment. And then maybe it was like 6 months later, I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm still getting people coming from your podcast. Like, are you sure you don't want to do this stuff? And she's like, oh no, I've kind of played with it. Like, I have a few. And I was like, how much are you making from it? And she was like, oh, about $2,000 a month. And I was like, I'll make you 10 grand in your first intake and I'll show you how to set it up. And I didn't want anything for it. I was just like, I'll just show you. Like, this is what I've learned and this is how you can do it. She's like, oh no, I couldn't do group coaching. I don't really believe in it. The whole narrative of group coaching is just generic shit. And then I guess, like, over time, I kind of convinced her. And she was like, yeah, okay, let's do it. But let's do it together. And I was like, all right, fine. Like, I'm well up for that. Like, I was just going to be like, here, I'll jump on a Zoom call and show you how to do this kind of stuff. I was like, this is going to be great. So anyway, then we did the first EC launch. We made 10 grand. And then since then, it's just gone like up and up and up. And then now she's like, oh, I can really see the benefit of group coaching. And actually, most people stay in the EC method for the group, not for us. Like, we're a bonus. Like, it's nice to have us there, but like, they love the group element of it. And then with Amelia, she had been offered by Shredded by Science at the time, I think, to write a nutrition course for them. And we were away together, again, like, get opportunities, go and see people, get out there in person. And she was like, oh, I've been offered this opportunity. And I was like, didn't you just write a nutrition course for Optimum? And she's like, yeah, it'd probably be quite similar. Probably wouldn't be that much work, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what are they going to pay you? And she was like, 15,000. And I was like, oh, that's a joke. I was like, go back and ask for more. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, actually, don't go back and ask for more. Just do it yourself. Like, if you just sold that once, like, did an intake once, you'd make that money yourself. And then it's you and it's evergreen you. And then she's like, oh yeah, maybe. And then anyway, then I was like, then she was like, let's do it together. So then we launched the IQ. That's how that worked. But basically, it came from me pushing people to back themselves a little bit more, which is easier from the outside, right? When you can see how incredible someone is. Like, there's no way Amelia should be behind the scenes writing nutrition courses for other people. Like, she's phenomenal. Same with Chloe. I was like, I literally have people coming from your podcast because you're not offering the service that they are asking for, coming to me as like a second option. Like, you need to be doing this. This should be you that's doing this. So yeah, it kind of came from that.
So get to events, make friends, hype people up. Background.
Yeah, be a hype woman. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, so just rewinding things slightly. So after Grenade Fit or Train with Jay, or around the same time that was kind of ending, you started Commit to Six, right?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about that. That's just you, right?
Yeah, that's just me, but I've got 3 coaches that do the check-in side of things. But when I started, it was just me. And actually, I don't know if you remember this, but I had a call with you. That was when I was working on, because I kind of forget about this, but like Upgrade You was actually the first group coaching that I ever did.
Yeah. You know what? I wanted to include this in our notes, but I couldn't remember the name of, and I felt really bad, of the guy who was also on the call with us.
Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Yeah.
And I couldn't remember who it was. But yeah, I do remember that. I always felt bad because I think you asked to see my Facebook page. I still remember this. This is how bad I felt at the time. And I couldn't get it up.
This is how, what's the right word? Like, I just questioned, like, I was such a skeptic of anything marketing wise, of investing in the business at all. And Jonathan was really keen for it. Yeah. And I was like, I don't trust this guy. I don't know who he is. Let me see his business. Let me see this.
So I was like, and he'd warned me. He'd said, I don't think he'd warned me, but I think he'd said, Emma's going to need some reassurance. I was like, yeah, I'm ready. I'll show her whatever she wants. And the first thing that you asked me for was, can I see your Facebook page? And for whatever reason, it's just like hidden. So what the fuck's going on? So
funny. And then we ended up going with someone else, and it was a really bad decision. So I regret that.
Never mind. You've done very well anyway since then.
Yeah.
So it all worked out.
Anyway, yeah, so that was the first group coaching, and then that kind of wound up, and yeah, then I started Commit to Six, which interestingly, and again, this one was probably like a lack of confidence thing. I was going to do that with Sarah Holden, and then at the last minute, well, a couple of weeks before we launched, she was like, I can't remember. I mean, it was probably an excuse and she didn't want to do it for some reason, but there was like a family thing or something. And so she was like, I don't think I can commit to this at the moment. And I was like, I'm just going to roll with it. So I just did it all myself. And yeah, it was really good. And then it's just kind of grown since then. And then I took on coaches to outsource the check-in side. Again, that was a huge stumbling block for me because I was like, no, it has to be me. People are coming to work with me. And then literally nobody cared.
Yeah.
I think you have all these expectations of like, I can't outsource these check-ins. And then they're like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, what were you worried about? Yeah.
So were the 3 hires that you made off the back of the growth of Commit 6? So is that why they were hired? And then are they getting clients off the back of that?
Yeah. So one of them was a guy that I've just known forever, Andy. He's amazing. And I think it was just really important that I trusted someone. So, and I didn't want to have to look over someone's shoulder and be like, oh, like, what did you say in that check-in? And I fully trust him and don't have to do that. And then another one, Catherine, who was on Commit to Six already and then had been there for like over a year. And she was also a personal trainer. And I was like, you know my business back to front. You've done check-ins with me for over a year. And I know that you're going to love this and over-deliver. And she still does. She massively over-delivers. So she's incredible. And then Shona also was a one-to-one client and then did Commit to Six. And I'm like, again, you know me, you know my vibe. You're a personal trainer in your own right. It was just like kind of like the perfect fit. So with all of them, I very much headhunted people as opposed to did like an application and got someone in. And this is what I'm finding with the AFM coaches that are getting to the point now that they're like, I need to take on another coach. It's really hard. And I'm so grateful for the coaches I have because it's really hard to find someone. And it's like, it's your reputation on the line. So if someone comes to Commit Six and the check-ins are crap, it's not really that coach that they care about. It's me. Like, they've come through me. So it's my reputation. So it's very like, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to outsource that stuff.
Yeah, I think hiring people who kind of know your business as you have is just it's a cheat code. So if you've got that group coaching, especially where they've been through that and been through one-to-one coaching and they've been part of a community, it makes things so much easier. How have you found the transition to managing people?
Yeah, I think I have actually found that quite hard. I think it's one of the hardest parts. I don't think I've nailed it yet. I think what I would have done better is set harder expectations, or like not a fully fledged contract, because I think people don't stick to them anyway and it's almost like not worth the paper, but the contract's important because it sets expectations and boundaries on either side. I didn't do that enough at the start. So now it's like those have to be reset kind of thing. And I think that's something that I instill in the AFM coaches is like set expectations of what you want from this person and what they can expect from you as well. And it's harder to do that 2 years down the line than it is to do it from the start. But at some point you just have to draw a line and be like, right, we're redoing this. This is how it's going to be from now on. This is what I'm going to give you. This is what I expect of you. But yeah, managing people is hard.
What do you put? Have you got anything in place from like a structure perspective, like one-on-ones, reviews, targets that you set them?
Most of them have, well, they all have targets. The thing is, 2 of them also have like kind of their own business outside of it, which again, that's probably one of the things that becomes the most confusing. And at some point it becomes a bit of a like conflict of interest of like, well, if you've got your own thing, then should I be pushing people? Because I'm essentially pushing people to your business. And then that becomes a bit confusing. So ideally, if you're thinking of taking someone on, take someone on that's going to be 100% your business with you, isn't doing anything else. Or if they are, it's distinctly different. So like Andy, online or me. In person, he's got his own studio gym and he does some one-to-one clients with them. And then he's got coaches that work in there as well. That's great. I'm not losing any clients to that. Like it makes sense for me to push people to him. but it gets a bit more confusing if you're trying to run like another online coaching program. Then things get a bit blurry.
Yeah. So that's where that contract probably helps at the beginning.
Yeah.
You can't
that would
do
have been,
this.
yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So you're working with one-to-one online clients. That's going really well. At some point you decide to launch the EC method. Sorry. Yeah, EC method. That's right. No, commit to 6. Even I'm getting lost in all the products. Yeah. So were you worried that EC method was going to kind of cannibalize commit to 6, or is it super different? Or how did you make that fit?
So this is a problem I still have, and I would never suggest my business model to anyone else. Like it basically grew from the fact I already had commit to 6, and then I was doing something with Chloe. Like they are in a conflict. Like, and a lot of people do both. In fact, most people have kind of done both. And some people find they really like commit to 6 because it's a smaller group. You get one-to-one check-ins, and the EC method is a bigger group and there aren't one-to-one check-ins. So like some people prefer one, some people prefer the other. It's not a big deal, but it is in the sense of people get confused. And when people are confused, they don't buy. So if you come to someone's website and it's like, oh, do you want to work with me? Here's 4 different options. You can have training only, nutrition only, training and nutrition, group training, group nutrition, group training and nutrition, and also this random other product that I do as well that's kind of like geared towards performance. They're like, whoa, what am I meant to be doing? And you think you're creating a product for everyone and it will do really well, but you're not. You're just creating huge confusion for people and then they don't buy anything. So ideally, I'd have 1, maybe 2 products. That's how you work with me, end of. But just from the way things have grown, and I would imagine over the next year, I'll probably think about how I'm going to navigate that to make them distinctly very different. But yeah, it's not a business model I would suggest.
Why do you think you've made it work? Just because of is it again from the benefit of the partners that you have and being able to lean on them?
It depends what you mean by work. As in, I'm sure that both of them would do better if I concentrated on one. Not both of them. The one that I concentrated on would do better. Like, they work as in they're both quote unquote successful, but it's like, how do you define success? And like, how do you know what would have been if you just put all your eggs in one basket and actually focused your efforts rather than trying to do 50 things at once? So yeah, they do. I guess partly what I was saying about like some people prefer one to the other, just personal preference if nothing else. And it is a slightly different vibe, mainly because of like Chloe's input and then the coach's input. Like, we're all different. So yeah, I think there's that element of it. But I think you're probably better picking one thing and doing it well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Other than probably the other 2 businesses that are distinctly different, which are EIQ and AF Mentors. So I'd like to speak about AF Mentors, if that's okay. What triggered the decision to decide that you wanted to help other coaches?
Honestly, a lot of it was because I saw some really awful mentoring. And I was always complaining that there's no women mentors and it's all men who haven't coached anyone for 10 years and actually weren't particularly good coaches anyway and don't care about if you're actually helping people and only care about making quick like buck and like, hey, are you actually even coaching anymore? Is your VA doing it? And sales funnels and just spending on ads and not checking if the coach is actually a good coach anyway. And then kind of preying on vulnerable new PTs and being like, sign up to this year contract that you can work with me. It's going to cost you 12 grand, which you absolutely do not have, but you should put it on a credit card. Like that kind of stuff. I was like, this is obscene and is everything that I hate about the fitness industry. And then I was like, why complain about it when you could just do it better? That's why I started AFM.
That's amazing. So that's actually identical to my story in OFB. It was, look at all this shit that I hate. I did complain often, and I basically got told by my best friend Steven to shut up or do something about it. So I launched OFB. So how have you found working with other coaches from a business perspective? Is there anything that's been eye-opening or surprising?
Work ethic is wildly different between people. Like I had people who, and obviously this stops pretty quickly, but who are like, I couldn't possibly post every day. I'm like, I post twice a day on ESG Fitness, once a day on AFM, and run numerous businesses. Like you absolutely can post once a day. And it's interesting, the difference between I worked hard and I worked hard like is like magnitudes different. And I didn't really realize that until I started working with so many coaches. I was like, wow, hard work for you is like an hour's block for someone else. Like it's mad. So that was quite eye-opening. And then it also really fits better with who I am more naturally and authentically, which is quite like a hard trainer. And some people like, like I can be soft when needed from like the coaching standpoint, and I'm empathetic. But with coaching, I'm like, hey, if you want to be pushed and this is your goal, this is what you need to do to get there. And it's kind of easier to push people because you're not worried about pushing them too far and their relationship with food being impacted. Obviously, there's like burnout and things like that you need to be careful of. But I can be a little bit more brutal, and people want it as well because they're like, oh no, I'd rather you told me that my social media is shit so I can improve it than tell me that it looks fine and then I just don't get any results because I keep doing the thing that isn't actually getting me results.
Yeah, that's amazing. So just on work ethic, I think obviously your output is very impressive. It sometimes intimidates me. I'm not going to lie. As someone who is consistently inconsistent on social media nowadays, what 2 or 3 bits of advice would you give to someone who sees your output and thinks, I don't know where to even start to get to that point, or I want to, how do I emulate that? Like, what advice would you give to them?
Time block. Google Calendar is like my best friend. Just block everything out that you need to be doing. Really try and think about the 20% of things that you're doing that are growing 80% of your business. So, for example, I focus on one short form piece of content and then one long form piece of content or platform, more to the point. Like I focus on my podcast because that's where most people come from, and Instagram because again, like that's where most people come from. I'm not posting on TikTok. I'm not really, sometimes I'll post a tweet because I want to screenshot it and put it on Instagram. Like I'm not really focused on trying to grow LinkedIn. And it's very easy to see, oh, so-and-so's doing well on LinkedIn, I should start doing that. Or Amelia's got a really good email list, I should start doing emails, or blah. And it's like, yeah, you could do all of these things, but you do them all really quite badly. What's better is to figure out where your clients are coming from and then focus on making that content better than trying to be on every single platform and just feeling overwhelmed and essentially getting nothing done. So I really always come back to that like 80-20 principle, that 20% of your effort is getting you 80% of the result. Keep reviewing that and be like, okay, it's been 3 months since I kind of had a bit of a look at that and audited my day as well and been like, right, if 80% of my clients are coming from the podcast, but I'm making it the last on my priority list, then I need to start changing that. That should be like top on my priority list. And just like the low effort tasks or like the low output tasks, income tasks, whatever, impact tasks that you don't have to be doing, that you're probably wasting a lot of time doing, sometimes just because you've seen someone else do it or you feel like you quote unquote should be doing that and actually it's not getting you anywhere.
And what about for people who say, yeah, that's all well and good, but creatively I will sit at my computer for that 1 hour block and yeah, I could probably post one thing every other day, but they can't think of what to create content about every single day.
One, always keep your notes tab open. I've got almost 10,000 notes of just like stuff that pops into my head. And then I'm like, later on, I'll write about that or I'll come up with something. 2, on the days that you don't have creativity. I mean, I've got like 10 years of content. Cool. I'll just look back, look on my insights, see something that did well about a year ago. No one's going to notice. If they do, who cares? It's been a whole year since I posted it. Reword it slightly, post it back up. Like, fine. Like if you have...
That's my entire content strategy at the minute for the past 2 months.
I mean, it's evergreen stuff. Like if you're in the fitness industry, I mean, same with mentoring and business side of stuff. Like it doesn't change. Like the 80-20 principle doesn't change. You could talk about that this year and next year. You could talk about calorie deficits this year and next year, or your 3 tips to avoid obsessing over the scales. every 6 months. Like it doesn't matter, but I would try and obviously have some creativity. But if you need to reuse some of the stuff on the days that you're not creative, like absolutely reuse it.
Amazing. Okay. So that's, great advice for people who are wanting to improve their content output, I suppose. What advice would you give to someone who's looking to emulate your success in general? So just, high level advice that you would give to someone who's looking at you thinking, I wish I could do that. I want to get to that.
I think a lot of things come down to luck and timing. So it's not to say that you couldn't emulate what I've done or considerably more. Like I would set your heights even higher, but like what got me here won't get you here now. Like things are different, so you need to play a slightly different game. The other thing I'll say is that I would attribute most of my success to just doing things that I love. Like I find it fun, which means that, like you talk about my work output, I genuinely love all the stuff that I do. Like I wouldn't be on a live if I didn't want to do it. I wouldn't be here right now if I didn't want to do it. So if you can enjoy it, you'll outwork everybody else. And part of that comes from building businesses based on what you love doing. And again, why I didn't like the mentorships, because it's like, oh, do this 8-week plan that we've kind of set out for you. This is how you market it. This is how you do this. Like not, hey, what are you passionate about? What kind of, like, what impact do you want to have on this person? Now, how can we create a plan around creating that impact for that person or solving the problem that you want to solve for people? That's how mentoring should be done. Like, what do you light up about when you speak about it? That's what you should be building your business around, because you will outwork everybody else if you do that. If you just follow what I've done and you're like, oh, the EC method does this, I'll just make the PC method, it will never work because it's not what you love. And that will show in how much work you put into it and how successful it is. So I think like worry less about always focusing on the outcome and like cheesy, but like enjoy the journey. And I always remind myself when I feel stressed as well, like I love doing this stuff, and 95% of the time, like I'm just having a laugh with my mates and I get to help a load of people, and it completely takes the pressure off, because realistically I'd be doing the same things, or 95% of them, if I wasn't being paid for it. And I think when you remind yourself of that, and a lot of online coaches should do that, because you can get so bogged down and stressed with comparison, and I should have hit this target, and I'm upset I didn't do this. And it's like, strip all that back. If you weren't getting paid, would you still do this? And a lot of them are like, yeah. I'm like, right. Like, let's chill out a little bit about hitting all these targets.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the only professions and industries where that should be an overwhelming yes. I'd still just want to do it. So it's hard. It's easy to lose sight of that, definitely, especially, with the way it's positioned as, online coaching. Earn more money. Like, or just be happy, enjoy it. Amazing. Okay, so on that note, are you up for some finishing questions?
Yeah.
And this is a hard one, as you already suggested early on. But what do the next few years look like for you as a business owner and your businesses?
So I have made a big decision, which I only made this morning. So I don't know if I want to say it on a podcast yet, but it's just outsourcing a lot, or basically bringing someone into my business to help me with a lot of things. And I'm extremely bad at outsourcing, even though I have a VA. I just don't really use her that much. Whereas this is going to force me to, and I think that will make me, like when coaches invest in mentoring and you see a shift immediately, because they're like, you take your business seriously now. It's not a side hustle. It's not, I'm a personal trainer, I trade time for money. It's like, I run a business and I've invested in it. That's what I feel like this is going to do for me, because a lot of the time it does still feel like I should be taking it a little bit more seriously. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And yeah, I think that's probably as far as I know. I'm excited to see where AFM goes. I'm excited to help more people on the coaching programs. And we're also kind of restructuring EIQ a little bit. So that's really cool as well. And I'm excited about that. And also from that point of view now, I learn so much from EIQ because we get guests on all the time now. I'm like, if I wasn't on this, I'd just be paying for it myself. Like it's awesome. It's like free CPD, which I'm also kind of forced to do, which is great, because if I was just paying for it, I might not watch every single lecture. whereas I have to take notes and I have to ask the expert questions. So I'm always staying like ahead of the game, which is awesome. Yeah, and there's lots more of that to come for EIQ.
Amazing. What's something that you hate about the industry?
I'm not going to rant about the mentors again because I've already done that. I generally love the fitness industry. There are some corners that I often forget about, that it's like people are still selling people crap like Herbalife and supplements that they don't need. I think I especially hate when they prey on vulnerable people. Like one of my biggest client bases is menopausal or peri or postmenopausal women, and they are preyed on like nothing else. Like there's the next menopause plan, there's some supplement for menopause, there's some new 18-year-old PT who's specializing in menopause, and yeah, that kind of stuff I hate. Fortunately, I kind of surround myself with like the great part of the industry where there's just phenomenal coaches, so I see less of it. But now and again I get a glimpse of it and I'm like, wow, I hate that.
I think it's actually a lot smaller than it used to be as well. I was saying this to Amelia. I think standards are genuinely so much higher than even they were 5 years ago, which is good.
But you're in that echo chamber too. See, I worry about that. And then I see the people in the gyms that I go to, you know, like if I go to a Pure Gym or something, I'm like, and I overhear a personal trainer being like, oh yeah, all you need to do is take this supplement. Or like I went to a David Lloyd's and there was a stand with someone selling Herbalife. And I'm like, oh no, it wasn't. It was worse. It was like the aloe vera thing.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep telling myself that it's getting better anyway. What's the biggest mistake you see other coaches making from a business perspective?
Giving up too soon. Like thinking that their first thing will launch and be amazing, and then they don't see it enough as like it's a bit of a test. Like you should think of your business as an experiment. The first thing that you launch isn't going to be good. The first podcast that you do isn't going to be good. The first time you go on a live, it's going to be awful. Like all of these stuff you have to learn. You don't start with experience. And I think too many people put too much pressure on themselves, and whether it's like an ego thing as well of like, oh, everyone will think I failed. Like honestly, nobody's looking, and who cares if they think that you failed? The people that are the most successful are just like, great, I'm going to launch it, I'm going to get some data, I'm going to get some feedback, I'll test it, I'll refine it, I'll improve on it, and I'll go again. And I still do that on every single launch that I do. For every program that I run, there's always like, what could be better? What could I do better? That didn't run so smoothly this time. Why isn't that working? Commit to Sukh looks completely different now than it did when I started it. And if it was the same product as when I started, no one would be doing it. Like it needed to be improved as I went along. And with online coaching, if you don't start looking at, I don't know, maybe it's Stridus, but like the best kind of software or the best service that you can give your clients and always stay up to date with that, like you'll quickly be left behind. So you always have to think of like, how can I be improving, and not let like quote unquote failures trip you up.
Yeah. I love that. So to finish on a high note, what's something that you love about the industry?
I love the EIQ/AFM family support vibe, or kind of just like that corner of the fitness industry. And I know I'm massively biased, but it's so nice to have, like, to surround yourself with people who are like-minded, all want the best for each other. Like, you'd be amazed at how much time people spend helping each other that has absolutely no benefit, if anything, potentially a detriment to their own time that they could be spending on their own business or helping their own clients. And yeah, it's amazing when you see people like breaking each other's limited beliefs and inspiring each other to be better. And I think surrounding yourself with those kind of people is the quickest way to improve.
Yeah, definitely. You can find one of those corners of the internet of your people, like get there and stay there. Amazing. Emma, it's been a pleasure. If people want to come and find you, where should they do that?
The best place to find me is at ESG Fitness, and in the link in my bio there, you'll find the links to all businesses.
Amazing. We'll put the links in the show notes. I have no idea how podcasts actually work, but I think that's what happens. Emma, thanks very much.
Great. It sounds professional.
Yeah. I'm just testing and refining, and then we'll improve from here.
Yeah.
Pleasure, Emma. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me.